There's a very specific kind of fear that only exists in the modern world, the sound of your own phone ringing. Not a text notification, not a missed call from a stranger, a real, live, incoming phone call from someone you actually know. For a huge number of people, that sound triggers something close to low-grade panic, followed by a very familiar thought. Why would they just call instead of texting? Psychologists have actually studied this reaction, and what they found explains far more than a simple communication preference. It touches on anxiety, control, identity, and even how your brain processes real-time social pressure. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why some people would rather write 3 paragraphs than speak for 30 seconds. And you'll probably recognize the exact moment your own phone last rang and you felt that same flicker of dread. Stick around till number 4. It's the twist that reveals what a phone call actually demands from your brain that a text never does. And stay till the end, because the last section explains something about control and vulnerability that most people have never consciously connected to their texting habits. Let's start with the most immediate psychological driver, real-time pressure. A phone call demands an instant, unrehearsed, unedited response. There's no pause button, no delete key. Whatever comes out of your mouth in that moment is what the other person hears, permanently, immediately, with zero opportunity for revision. Texting removes almost all of that pressure. You can pause mid-sentence, reread what you wrote, delete an entire message and start over, or take 20 minutes to reply without anyone knowing you hesitated at all. Psychologists studying social anxiety have found that this difference matters enormously for people high in evaluation apprehension, the fear of being negatively judged in real time. A phone call puts your tone, your stumbles, your awkward pauses, and your unfiltered reactions all on display simultaneously. Texting lets you present only the version of your response you've already approved. Here's the question worth sitting with for a second. If texting lets you edit yourself into your most composed version every single time, what does that reveal about how safe, unedited, real-time communication actually feels to you? A call asks for you right now, unfiltered. A text lets you send the version of yourself you're comfortable being seen as. Here's where this gets genuinely interesting from a cognitive science standpoint. Phone calls require your brain to process an enormous amount of information simultaneously. Tone, pacing, interruptions, silences, and formulating your next sentence, all while the other person is still talking. Researchers studying conversational cognitive load have found that voice calls demand significantly more real-time working memory than text-based communication. There's no visual cue to fall back on, no time to think before responding, and awkward silences carry much heavier social weight than a slightly delayed text reply ever does. Texting, by contrast, is what psychologists call asynchronous communication, meaning both people aren't required to process and respond at the exact same moment. This dramatically lowers the cognitive demand of the entire interaction. You get to think, you get to plan. You get to manage your response at your own pace instead of the conversation's pace. For people who already run a higher baseline of mental load, whether from anxiety, sensory sensitivity, or simply a demanding day, texting isn't laziness or avoidance. It's a legitimate reduction in cognitive burden that makes the exact same social connection significantly easier to sustain. Now let's talk about something that shows up constantly in people who strongly prefer texting: a deep, often unconscious need for control over their own boundaries. A phone call is an interruption by design. It doesn't ask permission. It demands attention the exact second it happens, regardless of what you're doing, how you're feeling, or whether you're emotionally prepared for that specific conversation. Texting flips that entirely. It respects a boundary the caller never even has to think about, because the recipient decides exactly when and how to engage. Psychologists studying autonomy have found that having control over the timing of a social interaction significantly reduces the emotional cost of that interaction, even when the content is identical. The same conversation that feels invasive as a surprise phone call can feel completely manageable as a text you get to answer on your own schedule. This is why so many people who prefer texting don't actually dislike the people calling them. They dislike the complete lack of consent baked into how a phone call arrives, uninvited, immediate, and entirely on someone else's timeline instead of their own. If you've ever seen a call come in from someone you genuinely love and still felt your stomach drop before answering, comment "same" below. This reaction is far more common than people admit. Here's the twist I promised you, and it's the piece that ties everything together. We tend to think of a phone call as just talking, but psychologically, a call exposes something a text never does: your unfiltered emotional state, broadcast in real time through tone of voice alone. Tiredness, sadness, irritation, distraction, all of it leaks through your voice whether you intend it to or not. Text strips almost all of that away, leaving only the words you deliberately chose to send. This is why so many people who avoid calls will happily send a genuinely long, emotionally open text message. It's not that they're avoiding vulnerability altogether. It's that they want to control how that vulnerability gets delivered. Text lets you share the truth on your own terms. A call risks revealing a truth you weren't ready to hand over yet, in a tone you never approved. So the twist is this: texting preference usually isn't about avoiding connection. It's about wanting connection to happen through a channel that doesn't accidentally expose more than the person consciously chose to share. Did that reframe something? Drop a below if you've ever texted something you never would have been able to say out loud in the exact same words. Next, and this adds important context, a lot of texting preference isn't purely psychological. It's also genuinely habitual, shaped by which communication format someone's brain was trained on during their most socially formative years. People who grew up primarily communicating through texting, messaging apps, and social media developed what researchers call stronger written communication fluency relative to spoken spontaneous fluency. It's not that phone calls are objectively harder for them, it's that they simply have more practice, more comfort, and more developed skill in the written format, the same way anyone gets more confident in whatever mode they've used the most. This matters because it removes some of the pathology from the conversation. Preferring texting isn't always about anxiety or control. Sometimes it's simply the communication equivalent of being right-handed, not a deficiency in the other hand, just a stronger, more practiced default. Last insight, and I think it's the one worth sitting with the longest. There's a common assumption that texting is a lesser form of connection compared to calling, less intimate, less real, less effortful. But psychologists studying modern relationships have found something more nuanced. Intimacy isn't determined by the medium. It's determined by the depth of what's actually shared within it. A 5-minute phone call full of small talk can carry less real intimacy than a genuinely honest, vulnerable text exchange that took 20 minutes to write carefully. For people who communicate more authentically in writing than out loud, texting isn't a retreat from closeness. It's often the exact channel where their most honest, most considered version of themselves actually shows up. So the real question was never, why don't you just call? It's which format lets you say the truest version of what you actually mean. And for a growing number of people, that answer has quietly become text. So if you're someone who prefers texting over calling, it's not rudeness and it's not avoidance of connection. It's likely tied to a real need for composed, unrehearsed response, a lower cognitive load that makes connection sustainable, a legitimate need for control over your own boundaries. a preference for choosing how your vulnerability gets shared. Genuine habitual fluency built over years, and often a more honest version of yourself that shows up in writing than ever quite makes it out loud. And if you made it all the way here, through a full psychological breakdown of something as small as a text message, that tells me something about you too. You're someone who actually wants to understand the why behind your habits, not just live inside them. That's exactly the kind of mind this channel is built for. Every week I break down the hidden psychology behind everyday things, habits, relationships, the way people think without even realizing it. If that's your kind of content, hit subscribe now, because next week's video digs into something even more surprising. And honestly, I think it might explain you even better than this one did. See you in the next one.